Stay with us because we're going to bring in right now Peter Baker, MSNBC political analyst and chief White House correspondent for the New York Times, and Dave Ehrenberg, former state attorney for Palm Beach County. Welcome, guys. Listen, Dave, quickly, based on what we know about this lawsuit, do you think it has teeth? Because the Wall Street Journal is standing by its reporting. Would the Journal risk a lawsuit like this if it didn't have what it sees as irrefutable proof?
Alex, there is no way that a Rupert Murdoch-owned publication would put this out there unless they had the goods. This lawsuit has no teeth. This lawsuit was not meant for the courts. It was meant for the court of public opinion. It was meant for all of us. It was meant for his base to say, you see, he's fighting back. That letter must be false. Let me just put it this way. If that letter did not exist, if the letter does not appear in the Jeffrey Epstein file, then wouldn't the Attorney General have come out and said that? Wouldn't Kash Patel, Dan Bongino have access to the Epstein files? Wouldn't they come out and say, this letter doesn't exist? But they haven't said that because the letter is in the file. Now, perhaps Trump can say that the letter is a fabrication. Someone else signed his name and pretended to be Donald Trump. Stretches the imagination, but okay. But even then, if that were the case, the Wall Street Journal article is not false. The Wall Street Journal article just talks about the existence of such a letter. It didn't say it was definitely Donald Trump who wrote the letter with his signature on it. So this lawsuit is going nowhere. It's meant for the show, not for the go.
So, Peter, nuts and bolts of all this. What do we know? What we don't know about these files? What's out in the public? What's still a mystery? And this letter, how much does it just pour gasoline on everything?
Yeah, the letter is fascinating because it does pour gasoline on it. It doesn't, on the other hand, answer the question that a lot of people have, right? The letter doesn't tell us something we didn't really know about Donald Trump. We knew he was prone to crude sexual banter. He used a locker room banter, he once said, of his Access Hollywood tape. We knew that he was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. This obviously is a reminder of that, confirmation of that. It doesn't answer a lot of the questions a lot of people have, but it certainly fuels the fire. Absolutely. Keeps the story alive, and it encourages more suspicion that there might be more there to be hidden. You know, when the president says he wants to have grand jury testimony releases, A, of course, a judge has to approve that. That's not a given by any stretch. And B, a grand jury testimony isn't the entirety of the file. So the problem for the president is even if they released some documents, even if they released some grand jury testimony, if they redacted it or they only released grand jury testimony, there's still going to be people out there saying, okay, what about the rest of the file? What about the things you're still not releasing? It's kind of a Pandora's box for him. Once he's opened that Pandora's box, it's awfully hard to shut it again.
Yeah. So, Dave, you're from Palm Beach. Of course, one of Jeffrey Epstein's mansions was there, so you may have some extra insight on this case overall. I'm curious your read on why the Trump administration seems to be against releasing whatever information they have on the Epstein case.
I think you're seeing it with this letter, that they are worried that Donald Trump will get caught up in the Epstein scandal. But really, they need to level with their base. It's well known and accepted that Donald Trump was friends with Jeffrey Epstein. They hung around the same circles. It doesn't mean that Trump was engaged in child sex trafficking or anything illegal, but Trump doesn't want the smoke. And the way that he's fighting so fiercely about this letter tells you why they don't want the files released. So it is perplexing if he's blaming Pam Bondi for not being transparent when the directives come from the White House. Pam Bondi's not doing anything unless the White House instructs her to do it. So this could be a case of scapegoating here. He may need a head on a wall somewhere to show his base that he's doing something. But in the end, these are his decisions, and he can end this controversy by just releasing all the files with certain redactions for victims, but he doesn't want to do that.
I'm going to pick up on that with you, Peter. I mean, we never thought we'd see this in the current political climate, but you have Democrats now siding with Trump's MAGA base demands to see the Epstein files. Is President Trump showing signs of wavering under this growing pressure? I mean, is the request for Pam Bondi to release parts of the grand jury transcripts his version of a compromise, and do you think it'll work?
Well, it is his way of trying to silence things for a little while. No question about it. Look, he found earlier in the week that he couldn't just simply dictate to his base and say, enough is enough, let's focus on something else. He tried. He told them they were being fooled into demanding it, that it was a boring case, it was over, we shouldn't be thinking about it, there are more important things to think about, and they didn't listen. And so, yeah, he's trying to see if he can find a way to quell this furor and force people to think about other things. It hasn't worked so far, and that's really striking because in the 10 years he's been on the national political stage since first, announcing that presidential run from the escalator in Trump Tower in 2015, he's had pretty good control over his base. They've disagreed with him on some things, and there've been moments of tension, but nothing like this. And I think that he is frustrated and finding it, difficult to figure out how to go forward because all the usual tools haven't worked for him.
So, Dave, on July 1st, 2024, testimony from Epstein grand jury from 2006, it was released. This is from the Associated Press. Here's the quote. Transcripts show the grand jury heard testimony that Epstein, who was then in his 40s, had raped teenage girls as young as 14 at his Palm Beach mansion. And Dave, this was 2 years before prosecutors cut a deal with Epstein. Is this exactly part of the growing outrage? And if you were investigating, what would you ask for? What would you want to know from the FBI or even local investigators in Palm Beach?
What you're referring to, Alex, are the grand jury transcripts from the state prosecution. And there was a big hullabaloo about that. And those transcripts could not be released until the law in Florida.
President Donald Trump finds himself entangled in a mounting controversy surrounding his administration's handling of Jeffrey Epstein-related records, exacerbated by a high-profile lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal. Wall Street Journal. The legal battle, seeking at least $10 billion in damages, stems from a Wall Street Journal report alleging Trump sent a suggestive birthday letter to the disgraced financier in 2003, a claim he vehemently denies as fake. The unfolding drama has ignited a rare bipartisan push for transparency, with Democrats and Trump's MAGA base aligning to demand the release of Epstein files, putting the administration in a precarious position. During a recent discussion, political analyst Peter Baker and former Palm Beach County State Attorney David Ehrenberg provided critical insights. Ehrenberg dismissed the lawsuit's legal merits, suggesting it's a strategic move aimed at swaying public opinion rather than winning in court. He argued that a Murdoch-owned publication like the Wall Street Journal would not publish such a story without substantial evidence, implying the letter's existence is likely documented in Epstein's files. This lawsuit was meant for the court of public opinion, not the courts, Ehrenberg stated, noting that even if Trump claims the signature was forged, the WSJ's report focuses on the letter's presence, not its authorship, weakening the case. Baker highlighted the letter's role in fueling speculation, though it reveals little new about Trump's known association with Epstein or his past crude remarks, such as those on the Access Hollywood tape. The administration's request for Attorney General Pam Bondi to unseal grand jury testimony is seen as a compromise to appease critics, but legal hurdles and potential redactions mean it may not satisfy demands for a full disclosure, including an alleged client list that the DOJ claims lacks evidence. It's a Pandora's box, Baker warned, suggesting that partial releases could intensify calls for more. Ehrenberg, with local insight from Palm Beach where Epstein's mansion stood, suggested the administration's reluctance to release files stems from fears of implicating Trump, though no evidence points to illegal activity. He criticized the White House for possibly scapegoating Bondi, despite her loyalty, as directives originate from Trump himself. The former prosecutor emphasized that even released state grand jury transcripts from 2006, detailing Epstein's rapes of teenage girls, don't address the public's desire for names of third parties involved, a detail likely protected by court orders. The controversy has exposed a rift within Trump's base, with far-right activist Laura Loomer warning it could dominate his presidency. Baker noted Trump's frustration as his usual control over supporters falters, a stark contrast to his decade-long political dominance since 2015. Democratic Senator Dick Durbin's claim that FBI agents were instructed to flag Trump-related Epstein records further fuels suspicion of a cover-up, though Ehrenberg called it an overreach to protect the president. News sources indicate Bondi's job is secure due to her allegiance, with White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles backing her. However, Trump's base, as voiced at Turning Point USA, holds him accountable, not Bondi, for the lack of transparency. Trump himself acknowledged on social media that even releasing grand jury testimony might not quell demands, signaling his awareness of the growing pressure. As the administration navigates this sticky issue, Trump is redirecting focus to figures like Jay Powell and Joe Biden, hoping to shift the narrative. Yet, with bipartisan pressure mounting and the Wall Street Journal lawsuit unlikely to succeed legally, the Epstein saga threatens to linger, challenging Trump's ability to weather yet another scandal in his resilient political career.